You know, more than ever before in my life, and I learned this from David when he was dealing with Saul. And one of the last conversations he and Saul had together was, the guy said, Saul says, "You were more merciful than I." And David says, basically he says this: "I would not allow your actions to define me. That I'm going to be the man I want to be. I'm going to sow mercy. I'm going to do good. And I'm not going to let your actions turn me into a man I don't want to be." You know, we need to learn that. You should make up your mind that you're not going to allow anyone to define who you are.
To succeed in life, we have to fight. That's why winners train. Spirit, soul, and body. We have to be ready. When the fight starts, all the theories are over. We either have it or we don't. We will get hit, but we get back up. We fight to win. Now, get ready for a tactical tip from Pastor Kurt.
I want to talk to you about something very important. It's something called normalcy bias. In fact, I recommend a book by Steve Tarani called Pretense and The Mind, the Most Powerful Weapon. Normalcy bias is when you begin to believe that everything around you is normal and you can't really see what's happening because your brain has said, "This is too terrifying. I don't want to pay attention." The other day, I was at a restaurant. I was meeting a friend of mine. This guy stands up behind me and says, "I'm going to kill all y'all." When he said that, I immediately began to look. I could see by the looks on the people's faces that people were not alarmed yet. So I turned around and looked. He didn't have anything in his hands, and so I knew I had a few seconds. He leaves me, goes over to the woman, doesn't have anything in his hands, the waitress, and threatens her, and then goes out, what I believe, to go to his vehicle and get a weapon. It was interesting because I went immediately over to the management and I said, "You need to call 911 immediately." And so I was grateful that he'd gone outside. If I was going to confront him, I was going to plan on confronting him outside. But I had to impress upon the management, "You need to call 911. And then it was said to me, "Well, you know, he's a little crazy. He's been in before." That's what's called normalcy bias. You think that this is normal, so nothing bad could truly, really be happening. In the days of active killers, when you see something like that, you need to get up and immediately notify 911. Do not let your mind convince you that nothing bad ever happens to you. Immediately react. Immediately do what is necessary to help yourself and your loved ones. Do not engage in normalcy bias. Call 911. Save your life and the lives of multitudes of others in an active killer incident. Hello, I'm Kurt Owen, and welcome back to Fight to Win. Yesterday, we left a damsel in distress. That's right, we were talking about Jesus from John chapter 8. We're going to go back there. We've been talking about knowing and believing the love that God has for us and how important it is not just to know about the love of God, but to believe the love of God. And to that end, you got to know about the love of God. So we've been looking at some examples of the love of God in action. And we've already looked at Adam. We've looked at what is commonly called the prodigal son, but we call it the loving father. And we've also begun to talk about this woman who is in a horrible situation. Now, I'm not going to be able to go back and reteach everything I taught yesterday, but you should get it. You should go to fighttowin.tv and get the buildup. If you haven't heard that, honestly, I'd go back and listen to yesterday first. It's absolutely free. Not only that, while you're there, you can like and subscribe and do all those things on the website. We've got some free materials for you. But here in John chapter 8, and we're going to start in verse 2, it says, "Now early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them." Okay, so let's kind of get the reality of this, okay? This is just like us, really, right? You're there, I'm here. And so, now we're not in a temple, we're in a gym. Thank God for the Police Athletic League of Port St. Lucie, who allow us to use their facility. And so, but we're here. But let's say we were in church, and you know it's going to be a long service because the pastor decides to sit down before he gets started. and so he goes ahead, and so you sit there, I sit here, there's a group of y'all, there's me, and then all of a sudden a group of preachers bring in a woman that has barely got clothes on. Now, again, I can't get into yesterday, but you need to go back and listen to it. Now, we talked about the woman and about where she was at, probably thinking on the inside of herself. And then it got down to this. Then the scribes and the Pharisees brought to him a woman caught in adultery. And when they set her in the midst, they said to him, Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery in the very act. Okay? So in other words, they grabbed her out of the bed and brought her in. Okay? That's what happened. That's just horrible. We went into it a lot yesterday, but can you imagine that? It's just, your entire life is laid bare, and the preachers obviously don't care about you, and they don't really care about adultery because they left the guy you were committing adultery with and just took you. And then they get you into church. Think about it. You are laying barely clothed in church between the preacher and the congregation. It's not like you're in the back corner someplace. You're right in the midst. Man, that is just like, I don't know, that's just horrible to do somebody that way. Do you know that there are still religious people that do this today? They just want to expose everybody's nakedness. Listen, I think there's a time for it. When you've gone to them, they won't hear you. But when somebody's hurting, they don't need you, the church, just to beat up on them. They need you to love them and allow that love to provoke them out of their sin, rather than just make a shame of them and a spectacle. Man, that's horrible. So, all right. So, now listen how they talk about her. She's already feeling bad enough. And he said to them, Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded. Now this sounds bad. The patriarch of our society, in the law, the very thing we live by, commanded that such should be stoned. Now it's interesting, they don't even regard her as a person. She is just such. No value. They do not see her. All she is a religious tool to be used to try to beat this preacher with. They have no regard for her at all. And people say, well, that's a patriarchal society. No, this is just a bunch of idiots who care more about making a point than they do about the people. And this they said, testing him, that they might have something of which to accuse him. Now, here's the thing. They think they have him between a rock and a hard place, right? He has been showing love to sinners. He's been going to tax collectors' houses. He's been healing all these people. And so now, if he says, no, don't stone her, then now they can say, see, he doesn't even believe Moses and the prophets. He doesn't even believe the law. He is a heretic. And if he says, you're right, kill her, right? Then they can say, see, we are right. He acknowledges that we are right, and they have something to which to accuse him. It seems like it's a rock and a hard place. And then he says this, and then it says, but Jesus stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger as though he did not hear. Now, this is kind of unusual because I always get people trying to preach about what he wrote on the ground. I have no idea what he wrote on the ground. Okay, I don't even know if he wrote on the ground, right? I think he might have been drawing, he might have been doodling, I don't know. When it says here that he wrote on the ground, I don't know whether that literally means he wrote it, like Jesus of Nazareth or something like that, or I don't know. I don't. And I don't think it's really that important to the story, because if it was, I think it would have told us what he wrote on the ground, right? I've heard people say that he started writing out the Ten Commandments. I've heard people started writing out their individual sins, their names and their individual sins. That's all kind of cool, but I don't know. I think the one that came the closest to I might buy into was a guy named Dwayne Sheriff. you haven't heard Dwayne Sheriff, I strongly recommend you listen to him. He's got some good things to say. But he talks about, he brought some scriptures out about writing on stone with the finger of God or something like that. Maybe. But again, honestly, I think if it was really pertinent as to what he wrote, it would have said he wrote on what he wrote on the ground. I think the biggest thing is that we learn from Jesus that when pressure is being applied to you, don't yield to the pressure. Don't just react. Take some time to listen to God. I actually don't think Jesus knew what to say. I think he wrote down, he knelt on the ground and began to write on the ground. People say, oh, that's blasphemy. He was God. Of course he knew what to say. Here's a news flash for you. Jesus didn't know everything. People say, yes, he did. No, he didn't. What about the woman with the issue of blood? What about the fact that he didn't know who she was? Somebody touched me. You know, that's a pretty good case also for it's only God's will to heal certain people, that's just complete and absolute garbage. You know how I know that? Don't you think if it was only God's will to heal certain people, he would at least know who they were? He could have turned around and said, oh, hey, Sarah, good to see you today. Yep, you were on the list. But it says that he had no idea who she was. So he didn't know. What about the fact that when he was 12 years old, that it says that he grew in wisdom and knowledge? If you know everything, you don't grow. Has it ever occurred to you that nothing has ever just occurred to God? He already knows it. God's not going to learn something new tomorrow. He knows it. He knows it. So, but Jesus, he had emptied himself of his divine privileges, as Philippians says, and so he stoops down to write on the ground with his finger as though he did not hear. You know, let me ask you a question. Do you do this when certain circumstances arise and you don't know what to do? Do you take time to just sit down and listen to see what God would have to say before you open your big blab mouth? You know, the exact opposite of this is Peter. Do you know that Peter on the Mountain of Transfiguration, it says that he did not know what to say, so he said. And what he said actually provoked a comment from God as though, you just need to shut up. What did he say? You remember what he said? He says, it did not know what to say, so he said, let us build 3 temples, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. And you know what God brought up? He says, he surrounds him in a cloud of glory and said, this is my beloved son, hear him. What was he saying? Hey, these 3 ain't equal. Hey, they're not even close. I know you respect Moses. I know you respect Elijah, but that right there, that's my boy. That's my boy. So shut up all this trash about we're going to build 3 temples as though they were equal. That's my son. You need to be paying attention to him. How did that come out? Because he didn't know what to say, so he said. If you don't know what to say, shut up. Just be quiet. Listen to the Lord. Now, I think I'm going to have to go back and listen to this part of the message myself because I need that. I need that right there. I need that. So anyway, he stoops down, writes on the ground. Now they think they've got him caught in between a rock and a hard place, right? And it says, so they continued asking him. Have you ever felt this way where your problem is just sitting there, tapping on your head? Hey, what are you going to do about me? Hey, what are you going to do about me? Come on now. What are you going to do about me? Come on, talk to me. What are you going to do? What are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? Is that just me? Where your problems sit here over and over and they just keep machine gunning away at your mind? And Jesus just ignores it. He focuses until he knows exactly what to say. He does not move. He does not allow the pressure of the situation to motivate him to do and be a man he does not want to be. more than ever before in my life, and I learned this from David when he was dealing with Saul. And one of the last conversations he and Saul had together was, the guy said, Saul says, "You are more merciful than I." And David says, basically he says this, "I would not allow your actions to define me. That I'm going to be the man I want to be. I'm going to sow mercy. I'm going to do good. And I'm not going to let your actions turn me into a man I don't want to be." We need to learn that. You should make up your mind that you're not going to allow anyone to define who you are. Never let anyone make you so mad that you can't do right. Don't let anybody make you so angry that you can't do the right thing at the right time. And don't blame them if you end up being stupid. Take responsibility for yourself. And don't let anybody turn you into a person you don't want to be. I've had multitudes of people attack me and do stuff, attack me on Facebook, attack me all the time. And there's times I've wanted, I've been ticked. And I didn't want it wasn't like I wanted to, like I'm hitting this thermos. It's not like this. I wanted to hit them with my thermos, right? I wanted to take this upside their head and boom, and I wanted to see if I could get their head to ring like a bell. People say, aren't you a minister? That's right. And that's exactly what my flesh wanted to do. And I felt justified. And my friends would have felt justified. They would have said, "We're not upset. You should have done it a long time ago." But here's the thing. I would have been a man I don't want to be. I don't want to do that. If I'm going to get physical with somebody, I want to defend the weak and the powerless, not myself. I'm not going to let anybody turn me into a man I don't want to be. And that's exactly what Jesus was doing here. A lot of times we don't think about this, that Jesus would get under pressure, right? That he would feel the pressure of moments. But he did. He did a lot. Remember, he'd say stuff like, "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful." What was he saying? This stuff's pressing in on my head. He would say stuff like, he would weep when people basically said, "It's your fault Lazarus is dead." He would weep. He would feel the pressure. He was in the Garden of Gethsemane and said, "Man, if there is any way we could do this some way different, let's do it." He would feel the pressure. He would feel the pressure of the time. He was tempted in every way like as we are, yet without sin. So can you imagine what kind of pressure he's feeling at this moment? I can just tell you, if right now Jeff and his Pharisee buddies brought in a woman that's half naked, and you're sitting there and I'm sitting here, and Jeff and the Pharisees are here, and the naked lady's here, and everybody's looking at me like, "What are you going to do?" Oh my gosh, I don't know. And the pressure, because listen, I love you, but I know what you would be doing. You would think this is the most fun we've ever had in church. I mean, this is wild, this is crazy. You'd be sitting there going, it'd be like a tennis match for you. And the Pharisee said, and Jesus said, and the Pharisee said, and Jesus said. I mean, seriously, so there's people that just love this wild stuff. And do you think I wouldn't be under pressure? I've got a naked lady in my service. I got Jeff and his buddies saying, "What you going to do?" And then all of you all like, "What are you going to do?" And he refused to yield to the pressure. You need to learn that. Now, let's get back to this woman. Because in this story, I want you to see yourself as the woman. Understand something. She didn't commit adultery 5 years ago. She didn't commit adultery 5 months ago. She didn't commit adultery 5 days ago. She didn't commit adultery 5 hours ago. At most, it was 5 minutes ago. She has been taken in adultery in the very act. Preacher saw her having sex. Everybody's now been told about her life. All of y'all out there just staring at her. So Jesus raises up and says, "He who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first." Well, if you're on the ground, do you know whether anybody's going to throw or not? I mean, some of these people, they act like they've never sinned. And so you're just waiting to see what happens. Now, what does he do? He stoops down and writes on the ground again. Listen, once you've heard from God, say exactly what he told you to say, do exactly what he told you to do, and don't add to it. Just stop. Yeah, but they're still standing there. Yeah, they're still looking. I know it. But stay exactly what the Lord told you to do, and it'll turn out right. Now, again, I want you to see yourself as this woman that Jesus is about to treat this way. Then those who heard it, being convicted by their conscience, went out one by one, beginning with the oldest to the last. Now, this kind of makes sense, right? I've been around the block a few times. I've made some mistakes and I realize it. Now, when I was a young fella, 19, 20, I thought that my sweat didn't stink. I thought that, it smelled like perfume or a cologne. And because, you're young, full of wit and vigor, and you figure you know what you're doing and you're right about everything. But the older guys, it's like, yeah, I don't think I could pick up a rock. I've thought of a couple things just now. Took the younger guys a little bit longer to think of those things. Now notice this, though. It says that, and Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. There is still one preacher here. Now you're still here. I'm still here. Half-naked lady's still here. The preachers are gone, but there is still one preacher left. There is still one preacher, and he is the only one that can pick up a stone. Now, what is he going to do? Is he going to do something because you, the crowd, are watching? Is he willing to sacrifice her in order to achieve respectability with you? That's happened with ministers, that they were willing to run over one person in order to get the respectability of the crowd. Is that what's about to happen? She's just laying there. What about you? Are you wondering what's going to happen to you in your life? What you can expect from Jesus in your life? Because it's not like you did it 5 years ago or 5 months ago. Maybe you're 5 minutes ago too. Now, Jesus has been writing on the ground this whole time. And now the woman is standing up, right? She's standing up. Now, this is even worse. Everybody's standing at her. She's waiting. When Jesus had raised himself up, I love this next part. He saw no one but the woman. These men walked in here, and what did they say of her? Moses said, such could be stoned. They didn't see her at all. And now, even with you standing there, Jesus looks at her and sees only her. He looks her in the eye. He sees her. And he completely, the rest of the world can go by its way. Girl, this is between you and me. I see where you're at. I see your situation. Forget about all these other people. This is just about you and me. Man, you need to get to that place in your own life. If you've made some mistakes, we got to live for the opinion of one. He sees no one but her. He doesn't care what anybody else thinks. All he cares about is her. All he cares about is loving her. Woman, Where are those accusers of yours? Has no one condemned you? Now think about it. Those accusers. What is he saying? I'm not your accuser, and I won't be your accuser. Has anyone condemned you? What is he saying? You won't get any condemnation from me. Do you know that most people believe that religious people believe he should have said, you whore of a woman, you have brought yourself, your sin has brought you to this place. Now, I think she's pretty well aware of that, don't you? I think when she got pulled out of the bed, I think she was aware of that. What does she need now? She needs someone that sees her where she is, that sees no one but her, and says, I'm not going to condemn you, and I'm not going to accuse you. I'm not on that side of things. See, you think that God is accusing you over the things you've done wrong. He isn't. He's not condemning you. Even if He's told you you're wrong, He's not condemning you. He's just simply stating a fact. He still sees you. He still wants to help you. Because now this is a woman that literally just got out of the bed in adultery. She says, no one, Lord. And He looks at her and says, neither do I condemn you. Well, don't you think if He was going to condemn somebody, this would be the lady He'd condemn? It's not like it was 5 years ago. She literally is there half clothed because she was caught in adultery in the very act. And the boss of the church, the Lord God, head of the church, says, I will not condemn you. So what are we doing that? Listen, if you're a sinner, Jeff and I were talking about this. He's a lot more compassionate than I am. But the truth of the matter is, if you're a sinner, I expect you to sin. I have more of a problem with church people that sin than I do sinners sinning. Because, we'll get into that another time. Condemnation does not take you out of a hole, it just buries you. Now notice what he says, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. Now, is he making an excuse for what she's done wrong? Absolutely not. He calls it sin. I acknowledge. He's not saying, it's just a problem. Don't worry, everybody's got something. No. What you did was sin. That's not a condemnation, but I'm warning you, it's that sin that will kill you and destroy you, not me. This is how Jesus wants to treat you if you've made a mistake. I want to pray with you. Come back after these messages.
To receive your free gift from Kurt Owen Ministries, call us at 1-800-215-0428.
Father, in the name of Jesus, for everybody within the sound of my voice, no matter when they're hearing this, Lord, I command condemnation, guilt, and shame to be broken off of them. And Lord, that they see that you are not the one that's condemning them. That has been the devil, the accuser of the brethren. But you are looking at them, loving them, and showing them the way out of their sin. Thank you for doing it, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.